Fasten your seatbelts. It's the final stop for now on the Final Destination fun ride. So, Final Destination 5 from 2011 in the 90s, this one, and there's a particular reason why, which we'll get to in spoilers, which is only really revealed at the end of the film with the final sort of twist. But you've got a group of characters who work for this paper branch. You've got the main character. What was it? Was it Sam, the main guy?
Sam.
Yeah. Who also has two jobs. Like, he works as a chef as well, which I guess creates another setting for more adventure and more like horror type Final Destination moments. But that's the setup. And the opening of the film, he's the one who gets the premonition. He's got a girlfriend who they're sort of maybe on the outs at the start of the film.
Yeah.
Considering breaking up with him, going on like a work retreat.
Yeah, some sort of corporate retreat.
Yeah, some sort of like, because and this has to be intentional. This has to be an intentional Office reference because it's a paper branch, and the guy who plays their boss is in the US office as well.
Oh, okay. So yes, I'm assuming it probably is then. Yeah.
It's gotta be. It's gotta be. Yeah, and he plays like the bully in that, but it's
okay.
This guy always plays bullies and jerks. I think he has one of those faces. I mean, not that he's too terrible in this, but he was pretty awful. But yeah, he's the one. He's always worried about like employees getting hurt, and not because he cares about them,
but the workplace
people, but more
being sued.
He doesn't want any bad PR. So we start with an incident on the bridge, and that sets things in motion. Rachel, what did you think of Final Destination 5?
So I'll say this, and we'll get into the spoilers as we go along, but I knew the ending to this movie. So I knew what the reveal was at the end. So I was watching from that point of view. And I actually kind of enjoyed this one. It was a definite step up from the last one. Not that is hard to be. We all know I was not impressed with number 4. I did like that the production value looked higher on this one. I mean, there were still some bad special effects on the bridge, but it is 2011. Also, I'm fairly certain that some of this was intended for 3D, because there were some shots that looked very 3D-like shots, but it didn't look as obvious as the previous one. Thank God. They definitely toned it down a bit. As far as characters go, again, I do think these characters were a bit thin, but they did seem to be wanting to giving them a little bit more oomph than the last series. I'd say the characterization in this was probably on par with the characterization in like number 3, maybe even number 2. Like I think the characters were okay, not fantastic, but much better than the last one. Seeing Tony Todd again was awesome. I absolutely loved that they brought him back. Delightful. Wonderful. Fantastic. Yes. And I think that they utilized him just enough. You know, they didn't overdo the fact that they had him back, but I liked that there were a few shots where you just kind of see him there. And again, I think this adds to this theory that I've seen that he is actually Death, or at the very least, he's part of Death's designs, because you do get that impression. And I do think that the ending of this film elevated it. I think that reveal at the end really, it does. It elevates this film and gives it a link to the other films that I think was really fun. I also think that this film brought back the tension that you need in these Final Destination films. There were some scenes where I thought, I mean, again, maybe not to the extent of the first or the second one, but, you know, the gym scene, for example, I was finding very tense, with the fan and the dripping water and the tack that was on the beam. So I thought that was good. And I thought some of the deaths were actually all right too. There were a couple of characters that I thought were really not fun. Like the girlfriend, Molly, she was a bit of a drip, and I didn't feel like she really came into her own until like really the end of the season, the movie. Funnily enough, the actress who plays Molly, I recognized her from an episode of Supernatural where she ironically plays a love interest of the week for Sam. So I thought it was kind of funny that her love interest in this is Sam, and she
Emma Bell,
played a love
I
interest.
think the actress.
That's her. Yeah, Emma
and
Bell.
I know the name, and I sort of did know the face, so I think I've probably seen her in one or two
She's a bit
things.
actress. actress. She's one of those actresses that, like, I think I've seen her in other things. Like, she just kind of pops up here and there. Like, I think she was in Lauren. I think she was in an SVU episode. I think she may have been in, like, Criminal Minds episode. So yeah, she's been around, but I remember her mostly from this particular Supernatural episode. But yeah, overall, I actually had fun watching this film. I had more fun than I had watching the previous film, and I think that they definitely raised the quality a bit, and I had a bit of fun with the premise. And like I said, I do think that the reveal definitely elevated the film. What about you?
This one, it's the first time I've watched it, and I'm going to make a bit of an out there statement and say it might be my favourite of the franchise.
Fair enough.
Now, I think this is a franchise that doesn't have particularly massive highs sort of thing. I think in a way they're all pretty much, the majority, apart from maybe the last one, they sort of fall on the solid sort of range where they're like enjoyable, fun enough, but like none of them are like really standout great horror movies, but they're normally very watchable and solid because of some of the wacky over the top deaths, and so they're pretty easy watches type thing, so that makes them very watchable. So it's probably like comparing it to that kind of standard, and I'm not saying like at the end of this review I'm going to give it a massive score there, maybe just because it's not a massive high bar for the series, but I agree with a lot of the stuff you're saying. I think the characters were a little bit better this time round, where you just got a little bit more, they just stood out a little bit more, where you kind of knew what each one was, what they were doing, and they were a bit more interesting to watch overall. Decent enough casting. The deaths were good generally. I thought like there was some fun deaths and quite inventive deaths. Like the gym one definitely was a standout. I thought that was outstanding, and also actually the one in the massage, like the end of that scene.
Yes, that
the
was
final
a good
shot
one.
of that was fantastic.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think there's some like good humor along the way. There's some good deaths. It was good having Tony Todd back in that sort of a role. And I think this probably feels like them sort of at the time capping off the franchise, because it does have that feel, especially with the way that like the movie ends. And I noticed also they had a montage at the end of the previous movie.
Yes, I thought that was a bit fun.
So that could be something where at the time they maybe knew this was going to be, certainly at the time, the last film. I didn't know about the twist, and it was something I kept saying throughout the film. I kept saying, well, why is this set in the 90s? Because the first time I noticed it was when you had the gymnastic thing, because it popped up on the poster, and I thought, okay. But throughout the film, they didn't really lean on it, like being a 90s set. That was a good twist.
Yeah.
A couple of bits of casting. Also, it was really good to see Courtney B. Vance in it. I think he's
seeing him was fun. I like him. Yeah, that was fun.
I liked his role. I think he's got a very distinct voice and personality, and I thought he had quite a nice little role as like the detective. He seemed to be taking things quite seriously and added a bit of personality when he was on screen. I also like, which we'll talk about in spoilers more, but I did actually like the stuff with the Peter character where he took a turn quite late in the film. I thought that added something a little bit different.
I thought he was one of the stronger characters, because I thought his actor was actually not too bad, and his little turn at the end was like gave a little bit of extra oomph to his character and made him a bit more interesting, and then obviously led to the final showdown. So that was cool.
Sam, I don't think he's the best actor, or I certainly don't think he's the best lead.
No.
Because I've seen him in other stuff, the actor, like the thing I know him from is, have you ever seen Election, the Reese Witherspoon?
Oh, yes, and Matthew Broderick, years and years and years
it's
ago.
Really
but he's in that. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
he didn't look familiar to me at all.
Yeah, no, I think it's quite a small role, but he plays one of the other students, and he's one of the guys who's like counting up the votes sort of thing in the election. So you see him a little bit, but yeah, overall I think of that sort of actor where I think he's probably better in supporting roles than leading a film, because I didn't think he was
great.
Very good.
No, I didn't either. And I found him and Emma Bell, I found some of their reactions a bit flat, especially in the opening sequence when they're on the bridge. And, I just kept thinking that I feel like there should be more urgency to your actions. You're literally on a falling bridge and you seem a bit blasé. Like, let's pump up a little bit more. Come on, like, it's a disaster. I thought they did a bit better in the final scene than they did in the initial, like, the bridge disaster. So, yeah, just a little bit of flat reactions.
Yeah, I mean, I probably liked her a little bit more than you. I thought she was kind of fine, and the relationship was, reasonable to sort of watch, but it was not the best acting, or maybe not. Yes, some of their scenes probably did drag on a little bit.
Recognize the guy who played Peter from anywhere?
No.
Okay, so I recognized him he is in a single episode of Mad Men. Do you remember the episode where it's at the beginning of season 3, there's like a big garden party that most of the officers have gone to, but Penny and Kingsley and one of the younger guys have stayed behind in the office to work, and Kingsley ends up calling his drug dealer and they all get high in the office. This guy, Peter, plays that drug dealer.
Okay.
Yeah, so I just recognized him from there. It's just so random. Because I kept looking at him and I'm like, I'm getting a sleazy vibe from you, but not from this movie, from a different thing. I'm like, oh, you're the drug dealer from Mad Men. So yeah, he was actually quite funny in that single episode as well. At the massage parlor, because his character was obviously supposed to be like the douchebag, and he was really pissing me off at one point. I was like, you are a little too much.
Yeah, no, like I think quite early on, I think at first I just thought he was going to be quite a nerdy Weasley character. I didn't think he was actually going to be as unlikable as he turned out to be. Yeah, he had obviously some like cringe sort of racism lines.
Oh yeah, some of the stuff when he was at the massage parlor, it was like, oh no, just no. Some of the stuff he was saying.
But
sorry.
Well, again, because it's intentional, so it's a joke.
Yeah.
It's a bit like, like early on when they're all getting on the bus and you've got the other character, the girl who like does the breast line. I mean, it's a gag though, isn't it? Like it's just a setup, then
Yeah, that part was a little annoying too. The way she just pulled her top off in the middle of the the courtyard, just like
she kept the bra on.
Well, that's a small favor at least, but no girl is doing that. Oh my god!
Well, I know, but it's fun, just though. A gag.
Yeah, but yeah, that guy was so annoying.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to the deaths. I mean, what was funny about her character is she didn't really act like that for the rest of the movie. Like that one
what I
scene
found interesting.
Made her sort of think she's just going to be a bit sort of slutty, and she didn't really play into that.
No,
because Peter and his relationship, I thought he was just using her for sex, but then they started applying and they were actually having.
Yeah, and they were actually
I don't know if he just didn't want to make it obvious they were seeing each other because they were working together. Maybe.
I think it was supposed to be like that. But he did have
quite a bad line to her where I got the impression this guy sleeps around and she's just like the latest. But
me too, especially because they said she was an intern at first. So I thought, oh my god, is she young? But then you found out that no, she's actually in her final year of college. I was with you, like I said, I thought, oh, okay, he's just some playboy, sleeping with the interns. But then it turns out that no, he was like a genuinely supportive boyfriend and, was encouraging her with her gymnastics and was absolutely heartbroken after her death. So that I thought that was actually an interesting development that made that character a little bit more interesting.
Cared about her, yeah.
Yeah. And then of course made his later actions a bit more believable. And I thought that added a bit to his character, that they didn't make him be like this shallow playboy who's sleeping with the interns, that he is actually in a relationship with her. And yeah, I think maybe it was just maybe badly directed or just not written right. But I think that, yeah, you're right, that it was more like, we're at work, we should be professional at work and not get caught, rather than I'm a playboy trying to sleep with the interns.
Enjoyed the opening titles, and I think they just had a Bond movie sort of feel, and they kind of maybe fit the tone of this.
I liked them too. I
quite enjoyed them.
And I noticed that I didn't notice this until the end of the credits, but I'm pretty sure a lot of those images that we were seeing were actually referencing deaths from this previous series. Because I saw. I saw the truck, and I saw a few of the other things that people had died from, and I'm like, yeah, they were definitely more fun than last movie's credits. You know, these ones looked more stylized, and it looked like it just suited the movie.
Yeah, it had a sense of fun to it, quite dramatic, but in a fun sort of way.
Yeah,
I quite enjoy. And Brian Tyler, who does the score, he's got a pretty great CV for scoring.
Oh, nice
stuff. So he's pretty strong. Yeah, he's done a lot of genre movies. I think some superhero stuff. He does.
Oh, nice.
This horror movie I quite like called Bubba Hotep, which is
that's a great name right there.
Did you think of the bridge sequence, the sort of big opening?
I have to admit, I wasn't overly impressed with the bridge sequence. I thought some of it was done all right, and bridge collapses, I think, are a scary idea. I have a friend who is actually an engineer, and several years ago, he actually witnessed a bridge collapse in the city that we live in that he was working on, and he said it was horrifying. I remember he actually had some extreme PTSD afterwards.
Sure.
So I do think that some of it was quite effective. Like I said, I think for me it was drawn back a little bit by the flat reactions from the characters more than the actual action that was going on. Because I just felt for example, when you watch number 2 and you watch the freeway scene, everyone is panicking and freaking out, and you really feel the terror of that moment. Even the roller coaster is the same, but I didn't feel that as much with this one. I did think some of the deaths were fun, and some of the situations they got into. I did find it quite tense when they were sending Molly across the beam, and she was balancing, and it was oh my God, is she going to make it? Is she going to make it? And I thought it was filmed all right. It was, again, definitely better than the last sequence, but I don't know that it, for me, would beat any of the first 3, because I just think the first 3 sequences are just so good. But I thought this one was not too bad. And the special effects did fail a few times. I remember being okay, this is definitely from
that's probably fair.
Yeah, but overall, I didn't mind it. And like I said, I think a bridge collapse is a better disaster than because I think the problem with the last one at the racetrack is that the disaster was just so over the top. It just didn't seem within the realm of not that you want realism in these movies, but you know what I mean? The plane crash, the freeway, the roller coaster, these are all things that you could conceivably see happening, whereas I think the race car one was just too over the top. But this, I think, brought that feeling back. You could actually be on a bridge one day, and unfortunately these things, they do happen, engineering issues, weather issues, things like that. You just don't know. So I think something like a bridge collapse is quite scary. It's a very scary concept. So I thought it was not too bad. Definitely improvement over the last one, but for me, not as intense as the first 3. What about you? How did you find it?
I mean, I quite enjoyed it, but that's probably where I stand, where I think it would rank reasonably low on the openings, but it still was good, generally quite good. I enjoyed the boss freaking out every time another person got off the bus. That was pretty good stuff. And like you said, stuff like Molly walking along the thing was good, and there was some good visuals in it. Definitely some of the effects let it down a bit, but it was pretty solid opening, I thought.
Yeah. One thing I absolutely loved, not from the opening, but from later on, when they were having the memorial for the dead workmates, and the boss actually read out one of the names of the survivors, the douchey guy. He read out his name, and the guy's in the audience, and he's like, but I'm still alive. And then like later on when they went to tell him, on when they went to tell him like Isaac's dead, he's like, wasn't he already? I thought that was so funny. I just thought that was a really fun bit to put in the movie, and I really liked that. But yeah, that was fun.
Because I like the character, like the other, the girl with glasses, her awkward sort of like that was really funny. And so, sorry, I just thought it was funny. And
I thought it was.
And he's a good guy. Like in real life, you would sort of laugh at that probably.
Absolutely, and that's probably something that would happen. A boss who doesn't really know his employees that much just assumes that like this one perished as well. So I thought that was really fun.
And that is quite a fun side to the movie. Like I know these movies aren't that deep and they're not meant to be, but I think they just captured that corporate sort of like culture quite well, where it's like this boss trying to be overly PC just for like appearances and and just like him being all like paranoid all the time. They really captured that very well.
Yeah. Plus I loved the running gag of him like calling the Courtney B. Vance character and constantly like snitching on his like workmates, like on his employees, like, oh, this guy's just done this. Is that really weird? And the inspector's just like, yes, I'm sure. Like you can see that he's getting more and more fed up with him as the movie goes on. So I thought that, I think that was what this movie did, but I think maybe was missing from the previous movie a bit, is it seemed to come back to like having fun with it itself, like it didn't seem to be taking itself too seriously, and it seemed to understand that when you come to these movies, you want maybe something a little bit lighter, a little bit funnier. And we've talked about this, I have a higher opinion of at least the first movie than you do. And I actually recently rewatched it just a few days ago. I think the first movie is a bit deeper and a bit better than the rest of them. But definitely from movie 2 onwards, you can see kind of the personality that this franchise is taking. And part of that personality is that, it doesn't take itself too seriously. And I like that fun bit that they kind of slipped into this movie and, decided to mess around with it a little bit and have a little bit of fun. So I really did like that. What about the death scenes? We both mentioned that we thought some of the death scenes in this were a bit better. What were did you have a lot of fun watching some of these sequences?
I did. I thought generally the deaths were quite good. I did enjoy the Massart part of the one because I think what they did with that was fun. Like I did actually have a laugh at him like being set up to have this sexy girl sort of like massage him, and then it turned out to be like the bigger woman and
she wasn't even massaging him. She was just like doing like really bad like being a chiropractor or something. I thought that was fantastic.
just as a like big part, because they set it up so well, because like the girl at reception was this hot girl, and then like it must have been like a sister or something, because they said it was like a family business. She came the other way and he's like, oh, look at her, I hope she's gonna mess up.
Oh no! Oh.
It's so funny. Also, the fact that he thinks the one who serves him at reception would be the massage. Anyway, that's not the way these things work.
No.
But so that was funny. That was a fun little gag. And again, because he's set up as a bit of an asshole in that scene, particularly, then some cringeworthy lines. But that means you can enjoy it when he does get killed. And The death was a fun death. And it was a fun death because of the irony of the Buddha. Like it's almost like the Buddha's revenge, because like he makes one of his crash remarks to the Buddha, and
that's actually exactly what Steven said when he's like, "Oh, Buddha's revenge! You don't piss off Buddha." Fire, and you've got the acupuncture pins. Oh, and that part where he like falls off the table onto the pins, and it's like, "Oh, dude, you've got needles all through your chest now. Like that is nasty." I mean, I love that you have that build-up of him like rolling into the corner and the fire just stops short of him and he's like, oh, thank God. And then the Buddha falls on him. I thought that was a great setup and it really paid off well. And I really liked that. I really also loved when she was sticking him with the acupuncture needles. I mean, I've had acupuncture. It actually doesn't hurt that much. But if you do it wrong, which I'm assuming she was doing, it will definitely hurt. So, that was a fun one.
No, it's a good scene, and I absolutely love the final shot with actually the splat of the blood, it goes into the camera. That's a really good visual.
Yeah.
So that was fun. That was a good payoff. Some good gags in there.
So the first death was the gym death. Yes, we should talk about the gym death because I actually thought that was a great setup.
I agree.
First of all, the fact that it's gymnastics, like gymnastics is a scary freaking sport, man. I mean, I have one of my best friends did gym for years, and the strength that it takes to do gymnastics and the insanity of some of the things they do, like on that beam with the flips and the backflips and the handstands and then the bars. And so first of all, you have a setup where it's definitely already dangerous. You know, you can hurt yourself doing these moves if you're not well trained. And then I thought that this scene, like, because I remember when they started this scene, I was like, okay, this is classic Final Destination stuff, you know, the fan's not working, so therefore this happens, so therefore this happens, so therefore this melts, so therefore this drips. I was like, good, we're getting back to, this is what you come to Final Destination for this build up, you know, you don't know what's going to happen. And I found it very tense when there was that tack on the beam and you kept seeing her just miss it, you know, like she'd jump over it and her foot would be that far away from it. And I thought that was a really, really great setup. And then her actual death. Oh my God. Like I was just like, oh,
the sound of it as well.
The sound of her body just, oh man. And the fact that it was such a good build up, but then the death was so like abrupt, you know, like that's it. Absolutely. You're done. It's like, whoa, what just happened? So I had a lot of fun.
Much faster than you.
Yeah. So I'm assuming you enjoyed that scene as well.
Yeah, I think this might actually be one of my favourite deaths of the franchise.
I hear you.
I thought it was really good. What I also like is the way you get the setup with her being concerned about the air conditioner and like mentioning that, because that's quite a good setup where you're thinking, is something going to happen with the air conditioner?
Yeah.
And it's a really good death, I think, partly because it gets a good balance of being pretty believable because of how intricate it is and because of how dangerous what they do is. But it also does have a little bit of the cartoony final bit, especially with the way it ends. Like, because, I'm pretty sure she could talk herself like quite like that, but it's just a fun little visual type to end the scene. So I really like that death.
I agree, and I agree that one is definitely one of the better deaths. I really enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed the build up, and just that terrible just crack at the end. Oh, it was horrible. But I thought that was fun. But I also thought that the eye laser one was fun as well. The what was her name? Not Candace, Olivia. The one with the glasses, the Lisa Loeb chick. Because I am very lucky. I have pretty much perfect eyesight, so I've never had to get glasses or anything like that, except for when I was a kid and I had a slight lazy eye and I had to go. So, but stuff with eyes is like, oh, I don't like it. So like, it's always a bit icky. You know, anything to do with like your eyes or your teeth or anything like in your face can always be really hard to watch. So I found even before that scene really got into the bad stuff, even just the close-ups of like the doctor putting like the Clockwork Orange type things on her eyes and putting the eye drops in, like I was watching it and I was like, ew, no, get away from the eyes. No, bad. And then when they just left her in there, like, is that normal? Could you just leave her lying there? And again, the build-up of like, you know, the cup falling off the water cooler, causing this, causing that, moving this way. I love that cause and effect thing that they have in the Final Destination films. And I really feel like this was missing from the last movie that we watched. So I was very happy to see it come back here. And then, of course, that bit where the laser burns her eye out, like that was, that was horrifying. I was squirming so badly.
I was going to say about something you just said, because there's so many scenes in these movies where you just think there's going to be so many lawsuits at some of these places, because like the doctor walking away and because that is a part where he's at fault, like, because normally like they're not really at fault because it's Death sort of doing the thing, but it's like in that situation, and it was a bit of a flimsy excuse because he sort of said about they gave
I
me
need paperwork or something like that. It's like, but she's all hooked up to the machine. Wouldn't you have done this before you set her up? Yeah, no, that was a bit dumb.
Solid scene. It's probably the weakest death of
I think it was the weakest death,
maybe
yes,
just
but
because we've had similar ones before, but no, it was the visual of it, and definitely the idea of something going into the eye and that being the actual death. And yeah, once again, the CGI wasn't great in this movie, but it wasn't as bad as in the last one.
No, definitely not. No, this one definitely looked better. A little bit of lore in this that I found interesting, which was slightly different, but I think what happened is, so you have I think what happened is the characters misinterpreted what the Tony Todd character was saying. So you have a scene where he's come to collect yet another body, and what's really funny is like one of the guys is like, "Are you following us around? What are you doing?" He's like, "I'm doing my job," and then he closes the thing and you see coroner, and it's like, yeah, that's why he's always around. But he says something about, you were supposed to die, so instead someone died in your place. So therefore you get their life and you get all the years that they were supposed to live. Now, I think what Tony Todd was trying to say was, in the bridge, they were supposed to die, but because they were saved, someone else on the bridge died in their place. But the characters interpret it to mean that if you kill someone, you then get their life and you get their lives. And this was just my interpretation, but I don't think that's what the Tony Todd character was saying. I think that this was the characters within the film misinterpreting what he said, because, well, as we see, it doesn't work. I mean, none of these solutions really end up working, but that was my takeaway from that. What about you? What do you think, that they were right in what they were doing, or was it a bit of a miscommunication?
Yeah, I don't know if I thought about it being miscommunicated, but definitely, it turned out they weren't really right. And so, you're saying in a way it's something which was never a factor. It's just that's the way they read it.
Yes, that's what I think. It kind of like, in the second one, how they believe that if this woman gives birth to this baby, it'll be new life. That I think it's just a thing of like, they've been given this information and they've taken the information the wrong way. And of course, as we see, that's what pushes the Peter guy to get to the point. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but also it's the reason then the guy who sort of is the boss of the factory.
Oh, yes, the token black guy.
Yeah, the token black guy.
Well, not really, because
who at least survives well, he doesn't quite survive the movie, but at least he lasts to the end, so they're subverting that sort of thing.
So that was an interesting scene, that scene where he was in the factory and he's dealing with that annoying asshole boy.
The one who used the retard, that
yeah,
guy.
That was a great insult. I heard him say that, and I was like, what year are we in again? Come on, let's be better.
But again, I knew that was setting him up for a death later, but
yeah.
I mean, I was wondering for a while, because once they went off with the main characters, I thought, are they really going to come back to this guy? So
exactly.
So I guess it was quite an interesting thing. That's what he was doing, where he decided to pick one who he knew was an arsehole, basically.
Yeah.
And by the way, just a quick bit on that character, because his name was Roy. Mm-hmm. And there's a character in the US office called Roy who also works in a warehouse. So they're definitely doing an ongoing.
Yeah, I think this is definitely, it seems like a little too obvious to not be a shout out. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, because everybody knows there's like a warehouse in the office as well. And you have an ongoing, like, you have sort of characters in there and stuff going on. So, yeah, I think
that's cool. But yeah, so it was interesting with the black kid that, he has that argument with Roy and he is next on the list. But then that hook comes down, he pushes Roy and Roy gets the hook instead. And so they think that death has missed him. So it does look at first, again, I think they do that nice setup that we do get in these films of like, oh, we can figure out a way to beat this. And you want to see, will their solution work? And of course, as you mentioned earlier, Peter has a build-up of, his girlfriend dies. That's right. They discover that in the original, that's right. This was an interesting twist that I thought they were going to do more with, but they didn't. They revealed that in the original vision, premonition, or whatever, Molly actually survived. Like, the guy who had the premonition, Sam, he died in the premonition without Molly dying. And what I really thought was going to happen is I thought that was going to lead to the twist at the end. I thought we were going to get some reveal that Molly would have died anyway, and that was going to, like, I was a bit disappointed that didn't really, go anywhere. I thought they were going to do more with that. But obviously, so Peter gets to the point where he's like, okay, I'm going to kill someone. And we see him say, oh, I went out and I thought, I could kill this person. And his friends are like, dude, are you okay? Like, at that point, I'd be like calling the cops. And then we find out that he decides that Molly deserves to die because she didn't die in the original premonition. And I think that it was down to the actor that I actually bought this, because I do feel like he escalated very quickly, but I thought the actor did a decent job in selling it. So it was okay.
Well, I think because for a lot of the movie, I sort of bought that actor as more of a douchebag than they were trying to convince you he was. So actually, when he did go full blown sort of Norman Bates at the end, it was quite convincing. He managed to be quite a convincing psychopath, and it was just a fun little twist and they'd not really done before, and because they almost made it for the first time, then you had an actual human villain type thing, which is what these movies don't normally do.
That's actually a really good point. You're right. Because you usually have antagonists like Carter, or the asshole redneck from a last movie. Like you'll have people that are like dickheads, but you're right. There's no human that's actually a danger to the other humans until this movie. So that is an interesting twist. And it gave us an interesting showdown. Like you said, having the kitchen set meant that we actually got quite a creative, fun showdown. I did think that kitchen set was a good set piece and made for some fun action in the final scene.
Yeah, because I also like the fake out at one point in the kitchen where the guy nearly stabs, like the Samka, and like, literally it's just
he turns around and he's like, whoa, that could have been bad.
Because I mean, if the boss had seen that, that guy could have been fired on the spot.
Absolutely. I've worked kitchens. I've worked as a waitress. That is very bad kitchen etiquette. You have to be screaming, knife behind. You need to let people know where you are in a kitchen. Otherwise, stuff like that happens. But no, I thought that was a really fun climax.
Peter's whole rationale, where you're saying that earlier in the film, Molly said that she doesn't really deserve to live like any more than anybody else. I kind of like that as a psychotic like villain type thing, where he sort of twists words around on her, because she wasn't really saying she deserved to die. She was just saying like she's not really any more special,
that she was saved out of chance. No, you're right. And it's really fun how he twists that to use it as his evil kind of rationale, like, oh well, you said this.
Yeah, because he also started going through some of the characters, and some of them are. Hang on, don't get carried away, Peter. I think some of them definitely did deserve to die. The massage parlor guy definitely.
Yes, he definitely deserved to die.
The boss, I would say, definitely deserved it. So calm down, Peter. I think Molly's probably more worthy of living than some of them. But, so no, we get to the plane stuff, and the other reason I enjoy this as a twist is because, once again, they're going off to Paris, as they do a lot of times. So I just thought it was going to be a typical end in Paris, where there was going to be some sort of twist thrown in there. But I actually, when they revealed, and this is why it is set in the 90s, because, of course, the original movie was set in the 90s, and that's the twist, and they're on the same plane as the characters in the original movie. And I thought this was a really good twist, which I obviously didn't see coming. There's stuff in the background where, like, Sam's like, okay, what's going on with those people? And then it's when another passenger mentions it, because he asks them what was all that stuff about, where it just hits them. But at that point, it's too late, because they chucked off the plane and the plane is gone. So, no, it was a good twist. I did.
like I said, unfortunately I knew this. I stumbled across this spoiler a few years ago completely by accident. I wasn't, it was just one of those things where I think it was in like a video I was watching on YouTube, or it was in something I read and I just kind of stumbled across it and never forgot it. So for me, it was really fun watching the movie to see what they were laying the groundwork for. And like I noticed a few things, like someone does use a mobile phone at one point and it's a very out of date mobile phone, you know, the computers are slightly out of date.
There were mobiles around.
The cars are slightly out of date. But I feel like it was done in such a way that if you weren't really paying close attention to the movie, you might actually miss the fact, because a lot of the shots I noticed, like in The Office, for example, they had the technology in sight, but it wasn't a focal point. So you were more looking at the characters. So if you were not a very astute viewer, you could just easily watch it and surmise that it was kind of only made like, you know, that was set in the 2000s, which I thought was really quite clever. Like, I liked that they didn't give away.
That's what I assumed.
Yeah, so I thought that was really fun. They also had a couple of references to, there was a reference to a roller coaster at one point. There was a reference to like the truck at another point. And again, I thought like these are little fun references that they're slipping in to make you think that this is a sequel, and then it actually turns out to be a stealth prequel. I thought the twist was done really well. I really liked that they incorporated some footage from the original film into this film. I thought that made it feel like really cool, and I thought that was done really well. But you actually got to see the shot of like Alex and Carter being, you know, taken off the plane. And then I liked that little bit at the end where we saw the black kid in the bar, and he's talking, they were talking about how Roy had like a heart condition and he was going to die any day. And you see the black kid go, uh-oh, and then a piece of the plane falls through like the ceiling and kills him. So I thought that was a really fun ending. And I thought it was a fun way to tie it to the original film without making it feel like too much like it was tied to the original film, you know, just that little, like a little bit of icing on top of the cake. You know?
Times I'm a lot more negative on all this tying in, or like all this and start with certain sequels, but this wasn't one of those times. This one made a lot of sense, and it was just a fun little twist, and it didn't really hit you over the head with it. And as I said, because it sort of made sense why it was set in the 90s, and because maybe a small complaint is that they could have done more with it being set in the 90s, but then I guess the reason they didn't is the reason you just said, is they probably wanted to tone that down so that you won't really notice too much, and then bam, they sort of hit you with the twist at the end.
Because you don't want to give that reveal away, because it is such a good reveal. Like, you really want to make sure that when you get to it, the audience goes, oh my God. And so, yeah, I think that's why they kept everything a bit more toned down. And I think it works. It works well for the film, because I was watching it and I'm like, yeah, if I didn't know this reveal, I would not have guessed it. It's so subtly done that I think you just wouldn't see it coming.
Like films being necessarily distinctly in a decade. I mean, sometimes I do. Sometimes it does stand out, especially if you're now watching it like 10 years after that decade, because it just stand out more. Whereas if you're watching a film at the time it comes out, I don't think you really think about it feeling like this is a film set, because you're sort of in the present, so it doesn't really stand out so much. So I didn't, like, in a way, even though it makes sense for like more modern films to have technology and cell phones, it's like, if you don't see a cell phone, it doesn't really jar with me. Like, I'm not someone who really thinks, because I'm here for the story anyway and the characters. So it doesn't really bother me. But it's an interesting sort of subtopic, because obviously there's certain films where like modern technology could ruin the premise, because there's a lot of situations where, because now everyone has a cell phone, then you would just think a cell phone could probably get them out of it a lot more easier. Unless it's a scenario where they've had the phone taken off them. But it is something where modern technology does kind of ruin some of like these premises from past movies, like if they did it today. But but no, I thought it was pretty fun time, this one overall.
Yeah, me too. I thought it was fairly solid. Like I said, definitely an improvement on the last one. And like I've said, I do have a higher opinion of the first one than you do. It's one of my favorite horror movies. And I do think that with the first one, at the very least, they are trying to touch on themes of death and, existentialism and, do we have control over our fate? But I think after the first movie, they clued into the fact that, that sort of theme was maybe not going to work, and they just kind of lent into the fun a bit more. But I did have a lot of fun watching this one, and I did think it was pretty solid. And like I said, definitely an improvement over the last one. So that was a nice surprise to see that it was actually watchable.
What would you rate this one?
I think I'm going to give this one. This is going to sound low, but I just because it wasn't anything spectacular, I'll go with 6.5 out of 10 because it was above average for me. But like I said, because I hold the first one and even the second one a little bit higher, I can't rank it. I can't rate it that much higher. But look, an improvement over the last one, slightly better characterization, some really fun death scenes, and I really do like that reveal at the end. It definitely elevates the whole film, and I think it ties very nicely back into the first one. So I'm going to go with 6.5 for this one. What about you?
I actually agree with that score. It's a first-time watch, so maybe it could go up if I don't want to go too insane because it's a first-time watch. And as I said, I think with these films, the bar is reasonably in the middle, solid, without being that kind of great. It's obviously not one of these franchises like Halloween where you have at least one masterpiece movie and then you have a few good sequels at least, and various quality up and down, or Nightmare where you have at least two really great movies and some solid sequels as well. But it's that kind of standard where I think most of these movies I'm in the 6 out of 10 sort of area, or 6.5 or around that. But no, this was good. I think this is one of my favorite of the franchise, so I'm going to go with 6.5 for now.
Nice. We're in agreement again. It's always a nice surprise when that happens.
I want to just do a rough ranking before we leave. If you don't have to spend too long, but just
fair enough. So I'll go from least favorite to most. So right down at the bottom for me would obviously be Final Destination 4, because there really wasn't much in that film that I enjoyed. Bad special effects, bad characters, and the death scenes, like we talked about, were really not that great. And there's also, like I said, I feel like that opening scene just defies all laws of physics and gravity. It is just a bit of a mess. So definitely number 4 at the last one. Surprisingly, I'm actually going to go with number 3 for the second last one. Even though I do enjoy number 3, I think this is, the fifth one has snuck ahead because the third one is so standalone. It doesn't really have a link to the other two, not even a loose link. And while I do like Mary Elizabeth Winstead, I thought she was a great lead, the other characters are a bit flat. It does have some fantastic death scenes, and I do really love the opening roller coaster scene. But I think because it didn't have that connection. Also, like I talked about in our review, it has a couple of parts that make me go, ooh, using 9/11 in it. Let's not go there. Don't be that guy. No. So that's where number 3 comes. Fair. So in third spot is now number 5, because as we've talked about in this review, this was actually a really solid one. And I feel like if they had just released 1, 2, and 5 as a trilogy, that could have actually worked as a really fun little horror trilogy. You don't necessarily need the other two. And like I said, we love the link to it. Some of the death scenes are really fun. Tony Todd coming back, always a big plus. So second favorite would obviously be number 2, which I do really love. The freeway scene is a fantastic scene, full of terror, full of just action and insanity. That one, number 2, has some really fun deaths. I also like some of the supporting characters. A favorite is Kat, the one who's always smoking. She is just hilarious. And of course, they bring Clear back, who I do love, Ali Lada. And of course, for me, the first one is number 1 because it is one of my favorite horror movies. Devon Sawa at the height of his 90s popularity. Just a lot of fun. Great deaths, great cameo by Tony Todd. I actually don't mind the original ending, which I actually think if the movie was released today, that audiences might be a little bit more on board with the original ending. That being said,
what was the original ending again?
So the original ending, so there's an added scene where Alex and Claire have sex on the beach, and then at the end of the movie, Alex actually dies, and because he dies, he actually does end the death chain, and then you discover that Claire had his baby. And so he's kind of like carried on with her. And then the last scene is like her and Carter together. And audiences didn't like it because they didn't like the fact that Carter survived because he was such a dick. They were like, no, Carter needs to die. We want Alex to live. So that's why they went with the alternate ending that is in Paris, which I actually really like too. I actually think that's a really fun ending. And for what the movie was at the time, it's a more fitting ending for the movie back then. Sure. The plane crash is still one of my favorite sequences, including the actual plane crash. I just love that they get the impact of the plane crash from so far away. Just that explosion and then the glass shattering is one of my favorite like moments in the film. And so and Final Destination is, I'm pretty sure, if it's not in my top 10 horror movies, which we'll have to revisit that list, it's very close to top 10 because I really love it.
I know it's quite high.
Yeah, so that's my ranking. What about you?
Okay, well, so my ranking's going to be a bit weird, and I think probably it's going to be a bit out of step with a lot of horror fans, at least. But so my bottom one, I agree with you for the last one. My bottom one is number 4. Yeah, I thought it was completely forgettable. I thought most of the characters were bad, and the deaths weren't even that good. That was the disappointing thing. Like, normally these movies can be saved by some good deaths, but mostly the deaths were pretty lame, I thought, and some pretty, like, it wasn't even that entertaining to watch. I thought the music was pretty bad. The end of the movie really dragged on, and we talked about how bad like some of the CGI was, and just how cheap the movie looked in general, dull and boring to watch. So definitely on board with that being the worst. So for number 2 next, because and that's obviously an outlier, because I think for most horror fans number 2 is actually the best for them.
Yes, most people do like
it's their favorite. I think it's just because outside of the freeway scene, which I think is fantastic and is definitely the best of those opening scenes, I think outside of that, I just, there's not that much more in the movie than I get into. Like, I think those 3 characters you have who are sort of the leads are fine as a trio. Like, that they're okay, but the rest of the characters I don't really get into, and a lot of the other deaths I don't think are that good. I do quite like the ending. That's a fun little gag, but yeah, I mean, maybe 2 I'll revisit and get a bit more into. It's definitely solid, but this is where I am a bit of an outlier, I think, with like horror fans. Yeah. Because so my number 3 is actually the first movie.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
Now, this is the one I've watched the most, and like you, I did sort of grow up on it. So I do have nostalgia for it, and I think it is a watchable movie and a good premise. And unlike some of the sequels, I think the characters are really solid. And at least you can sort of say, well, this guy is that character, or this person is that character, and they do sort of, they serve a purpose type thing, even though, like, you know, like the Sean William Scott character is very like dweeby and annoying. he kind of serves a purpose. Yeah. And I think Carter is quite a good bully character who does have a little bit of an arc as well. Like, he does grow a little bit over the movie. I do think, like I said when we did the review, it takes itself a bit too seriously at times, and I think some of that stuff gets quite annoying, but it's solid. Like, it's a solid watch overall, and it obviously set things up for the franchise in quite a decent sort of way. So that's my number 3. So my number 2 is number 3, which I think because it has some of my favourite deaths of the franchise. I think that's why I rank it so high. I love the tanning bed scene.
Yes, that is a great scene.
I love some of the tension at the end at like the carnival with like the horse and what have you. The DIY store scene I think is really fantastic. So the deaths really elevate that movie. I think it has some of the strongest deaths in the franchise. I definitely agree the standard of the characters are really bad, apart from, I guess the main 2 are
the main
not
2
bad.
are okay. Yeah.
And it's partly because I think Mary Elizabeth Winstead is a watchable actress with a fair bit of charisma. And,
that definitely.
And also her sister in that film, I didn't mind. Like the sister and their sort of pairing was quite good. So it is the deaths mostly that elevate it. I think the roller coaster is a good opening.
It is, yeah.
And
it's really fun.
And also the ending on the underground I really like, because once again that's quite a freaky sort of setting, being packed into like those busy like underground style cars, and you can just think about something like that happening. So the ending was good. So this order could change, but for now I'm going for 3 as my number 2. There was some investigating in it as well with the photographs, which I quite appreciated. So at the moment I'm going to go number 5 as my favourite, because I did enjoy this one quite a lot. There was some good deaths in it. I thought the characters were mostly solid. There was some fun gags in it. The twist at the end was like impressive. I enjoyed that as a twist. So overall I'd say maybe I enjoyed this one the most of the 5 movies. At least on the first viewing. The gymnastic death was one of the best death scenes of the franchise.
That one was great.
Having Tony Todd back and extending his role, I think that was a really smart choice.
And I'm just assuming this, but like my gaps in like my favorites are quite big, whereas I feel like your gaps would be quite small. Like, you like this one more, but only by a little bit, because you seem to hold all the movies to a fairly like same kind of solid standard, whereas I find the first 2 to be quite a lot better than the rest of them. So there's a bigger gap in my rankings, I think. Fun doing that franchise because I know the first 2 so well, especially the first one, because I just have watched it so much. And I think I've mentioned this, but it was one of the first horror films I ever really saw when I was first getting into horror. So I do have that kind of nostalgia for it. But I hadn't seen 4 and 5. So that was fun to do like a first watch of those ones, and to revisit number 3 as well, because like I said when we did the review, I hadn't seen number 3 since the first time I saw it, which was back in 2009. So it was fun to revisit it and realize that no, I actually did enjoy it more than I enjoyed it last time. So, and this was a slightly shorter franchise than the ones that we usually go for. I mean, Halloween was like 13 movies long, so a nice 5-movie stint was good.
This was fun because like the last 2 movies I'd not seen before, so it was good to get them ticked off. We're up to date with another franchise, and if there ever is a part 6, then we'll get to that as well. Cindy actually had a fun idea, because this one turned out to be a prequel. She had an idea that they could do that again next time, but set in a different decade, like set in the 80s or something.
That could be cool. Yeah,
that could be, because you can play with like the decade and give it a bit more personality.
Absolutely.
That could be fun if they're going to keep like this series going. So But so that's our thoughts on Final Destination 5. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Like and subscribe as always. Also, if you want, you can rank the 5 movies as well. Let us know which order you would go. So, Rachel, if you want to promote your channel.
Guys, you can follow my channel, Rachel McDonald, video essays on TV shows and movies. I do have quite a few horror movies on there, so come and check me out. My Tumblr is also linked through my YouTube, and Keith usually puts a link in the description so you lovely people can find me, so come and follow me everywhere.
Thanks, guys. Keep watching horror movies. We'll be back with more soon. See you later. Bye.